I'm sorry, my audio and visuals are not lining up, so I still wanted to make this video because I do get some questions on both my channels about ITC and this question was very important. Now I do try and answer as many questions as I can when I get them. This one is extremely important, and I did reply to the question, but I thought by making a video I can give more information and more personal thought to it, so we're going to be talking about today. The subject I want to talk about is fear of ITC. This question came in from a ITC operator, a new ITC operator, and to get a full understanding of fear around ITC, I have to go back to the late 1990s when I was first introduced to ITC. Before I get into that, actually, I have to relay what the question actually was. A new ITC operator was getting demonic type communications and swear words and very negative communication, which is something that I had feared in the beginning because I got it myself. I still get it from now and again, but sort of have learned to deal with it. When you're new to ITC, this can be very, very daunting and very, very scary, so I can understand the fear surrounding this kind of communications. My first real interaction with ITC, or my first introduction to ITC, was in the late 90s, and it was a science teacher that demonstrated to me the technique of direct radio voices, which to me at the time sounded completely impossible because it involved the static from a radio and direct answers to questions. I experienced direct answers to questions through the static between stations of a radio, which was conducted by a science teacher. And when you are not experienced or have not experienced ITC before, that in one way produced fear. In other ways, it produced fascination. And I was encouraged to try this for myself. So I got an old radio at home, a car radio. I put a transformer to it, built a lovely little box around it, and started asking questions and listening through the static in that. And I didn't do it long enough to get a lot of results, but when I did get a result one evening at home, I turned the radio off. I got a direct answer to my question, and I cannot remember what that question was, but I do remember leaving my room, getting on my bicycle, going for a spin to clear my head. And when I got back home, I was afraid to go to sleep that night. Now, it wasn't negative communication, but it was communication through a static radio where the tuner was removed, which to me was completely impossible that it was radio. And I didn't sleep that night because the human condition, very often we produce fear of something we don't understand or we cannot see. And that was what happened to me at that time. We fast forward to, the present day, where a lot of people have picked up on the methods of Frank Sumption with this scanned radio. More and more people are doing it, and it involves snippets of radio. Now, sometimes there is pareidolia. There is people out there that put subtitles to sessions where it's very clear that it's actually radio broadcast and not direct answers to questions asked, and they still put the subtitle there, where it's complete and utter radio. You have to be aware that pareidolia can be a thing with the scanning radio. However, there is times where language and tone is completely different to the radio broadcast, and you have this communication like a communicator claiming to be the devil or Satan or a demon, and loads of swear words and stuff like that. Now, putting pareidolia aside, we know pareidolia is a thing. We do sometimes get this sort of communication. Now, a lot of people would encourage this because it is very unusual in a radio broadcast, and it will stick out. And I would say in the past that I encourage that, and very often my viewers pick that out before any other communication, where it says devil, Satan, F words, B words, stuff like that. They would pick those negative words out before they would actually pick the positive words out, or direct answers to questions. Now, today I actually deal with negative communication a lot differently, and there is a reason for that. Right, we have to go back to the 1990s again. I'm the science teacher who was very interested in the work of Marcello Bacci. Now, I was aware a couple of weeks before he had mentioned Marcello Bacci. I was aware of Marcello Bacci because there was an actual segment on the TV, on the news, the 6 o'clock news, where at the end to be something unusual, rather than the usual news broadcasting. At the end, they would add something different. And one evening, I was sitting in the house. My parents and myself were watching television, and the segment was actually this guy who could talk to the dead through the static of a radio. My mother was, that's fake. And I thought maybe it's fake, but it seems very, very fascinating. Now, the science teacher was well aware of Marcello Bacci because he had some VHS videotapes, and he showed me some of those videotapes. And he had spent a lot of time trying to get to the bottom of this communication. I mean, like, he was like a dog with a bone. He just could not let go. And at the end of it all, he had come to the conclusion that there was something about the operator that was important for that communication. Because you would understand if we were using radio broadcast, that we could, that pareidolia could have been a factor, but this was between stations and that. And we sort of came to the conclusion that it was something to do with Marcello Bacci. It was something to do with the operator. Now, this is the reason why I deal with negative communication differently than I did. In the beginning, I was very inexperienced about it, and I thought, communication is communication. Doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. But I look back on that time now, and I think I better deal with the negative communication different than I once did. And my way of dealing with it is to basically cut the communication if a lot of negative communication comes in. It's nothing to be fearful of, and I know it takes a bit of learning not to be fearful, but I wouldn't encourage negative communication. You see a lot of that on YouTube and that. And that's another thing. Be very, very careful of who you're being influenced by on YouTube, because I do see a lot of channels, and yes, there is some genuine channels out there. There is some channels who claim to be genuine, but at the end of the day, they what they want, their end goal subconsciously is attention on them. They want to be famous for ITC. They want to be famous for spur communication. It's not about the spur communication themselves. So you be very, very careful of who you're influenced by. But the way I deal with negative communication now is I try to get it to stop, and if it doesn't, I will cut the session short, because if we are part of the communication, do you really want negativity around you? Is there a possibility that this could be an effect on your mental health? I don't know, but I just really would not. I would rather not have that negativity. And if we are actually used as part of that communication, I don't want that negativity being used through myself. So that's why I would cut communication. Which brings me on to fear, and how to deal with the fear aspect of being new to ITC. Communicators are from an unknown source or origin. They may say that they're dead. They may say that they're in a different dimension. They may say that they're in hell. They may say that they're, in other places. But because we cannot see them, and the communication is not perfect, this is not 100% solid concrete proof. So we do not know 100% what we're communicating with, because our eyes don't see the communicators that are communicating with us, and that does add to fear when you're at the beginning of an ITC journey, or at the beginning of doing ITC, and that is completely understandable. One thing you have to ask yourself is, getting into ITC, you are trying to make contact with communicators of an unknown source or origin, as Joshua Sean would say, which is completely true. But you have to really think exactly what that means. This is not a party trick. It is very, very serious. This is what we're trying to do. There's other people out there that, their intentions are Not 100%. They see other people on YouTube getting views for doing ITC, and their main focus is actually their channel. So you have to be careful of that. What is your intentions for doing ITC? Very often, a lot of people turn to ITC out of grief, out of curiosity, and curiosity is okay. They are curious about what happens to us when we die, trying to communicate with this unknown source. Would it give them comfort in knowing something is out there? And do we go to a different place when we pass away from this world? Now, we cannot 100% say that all the communicators that come through are spirits of dead people. I'm not saying that at all. But going through history, a lot of the evidence turns in that direction. So that is why we very often presume that the communicators are those of dead people. Now, I have heard EVPs when I was younger, because my uncle had a amateur radio station. He had a big tower, and he had these magazines. Now, I don't know what the name of the magazines are. They were way back in the late 70s. I was very young, and he allowed me to play his records, and some of those records were free singles from the magazine, and it was to do with extraterrestrial communications. And actually, only last week I was looking at a documentary, and one of those same EVPs was classified as, through the documentary, was classified as possibly spur communication and not alien communication, which these magazines were geared towards. So I had been listening to these EVPs way back then, thinking that they were possibly aliens and that. My uncle must have had some sort of an interest in that, having an amateur radio station, talking to a lot of people around the world and that. And very often those amateur radio people get into ITC and get into this other communication because they accidentally come across these strange communications that they cannot find a source for, and that's how some of them get into EVPs. Earlier I mentioned the possibility that the operator is very important in the communication. The reason I brought this up is because results are considerably different when an operator is present and when an operator is absent. That is a scanning radio or a radio on static being present without the operator and it just recording, and the presence of an operator who is asking questions and trying to communicate. There has been difference in the results between both. And the other part of the possibility that the operator is important is there has been occasions where I'm about to ask a question and the question gets answered with a specific answer to that specific question, or is answered while I'm still asking the question. So is our minds, is our brains, is our thoughts being used as the communication? maybe so. Again, this is theory. This is sort of observation from operators, and it's not just me. Other operators also have the same experience. So, is our thoughts being read? Is our attitude being read? Possibly. Now, this is very important to bring up this, because if you're getting negative communication, you have to ask yourself, are you in the positive frame of mind to conduct communication at that particular time? I have often done communication sessions to put on my YouTube channel where my mind was not fully in it, and that is not a very good thing to do. Getting YouTube videos out isn't the main goal of ITC. It's the communication. Are you in a positive frame of mind while doing those sessions? And people often advise me, and they often say that if you're not in a positive frame of mind, or you are finding it difficult to focus, maybe give it a break for a few days and come back. Has this any connection with negative communication? I don't know. I can't honestly say that. But is there a possibility? Yes, there could be a possibility. I cannot say anyway. But we can only analyze this from doing ITC and doing ITC over a number of years, and talking to other people that do ITC also. So positive frame of mind and proper focus could be a very important factor, whether you get positive or negative communication. But then again, I'm not saying that this is 100% a fact, but there is a possibility. But if you're not focusing and your mind is on other things, it is a good idea maybe to give ITC a little break for a couple of days. When it comes to negative communication, we also have to ask, are this negative communication, is it directed at us? Because sometimes we get this impression that sometimes communicators are talking to each other and not talking to us. So some of the swear words and the demonic type communication may not be directed at us at all. But very often a lot of people, including myself in the past, made the assumption that all communication was directed towards the operator, which may or may not be the case. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another factor which may come into play, and it actually reflects very badly on myself, is that I am asking questions to the communicators, and I'm listening the best I can. But if the communicators are asking us questions and we miss it, and we ask a question of our own, ignoring the communicator's question, that kind of reflects very badly on us. But it sometimes can't be avoided, because if we're using a scanning radio with lots of snippets of voices, it is very, very hard to process in real time what is being said. A lot of operators, even the very experienced operators, would say that you would miss 70 to 75% of the communication in real time. That is why when I finish recording, I play it back and I hear things that I've missed the first time. So recording is very, very important. Listening is extremely important and extremely difficult. The way that I conduct sessions now is my equipment is my radios is connected to a soundboard and then fed into the computer. And in along that circuit, I have connections for headphones, so I can hear it directly rather than having to listen from a speaker. Having the headphones on, I can hear a lot more, but I still miss an awful lot. And I listen back and I say, I can't believe I've missed that in real time. But that sometimes happens. The reason I brought this up is because if you can imagine human interaction, you ask somebody, how is your day today? And they don't answer you, but they ask you a question. You would say, that's a bit rude. This is what we sometimes do with our communication. And is there a possibility that the communicators get frustrated with us and maybe call us names and stuff? I don't know. But that possibility is there. Because I do miss a lot in real time. Even recently, I've heard very, very clear communications on playback, but at the time, I missed it. And I'm thinking to myself, how did I miss that? Now, is it a possibility that I just genuinely missed it? My brain was trying to process all these snippets of words, and I just simply missed it, and I wasn't able to process it at the time, but was able to process it in recording, on recorded playback. Or was that communication there in real time, or was it only being able to be listened to on playback? Similar to EVP. You don't hear EVP in real time. You record the EVP and then you play it back and you listen for replies. Is there a possibility that this happens through a spirit box or the radio? Maybe. I don't know. But the reason why I brought up the listening is that sometimes we miss a lot, and the communication's not perfect, and our listening is very important, even though we still miss a lot. And even the most experienced people say they miss a lot too. So there is a possibility that we've been asked questions. They're trying to communicate with us, but we've got our own agenda going on. We've our questions to ask, and we're thinking in our head, we're going to ask this question, we're going to ask that question. In the meantime, the communicator is trying to communicate with you with a different agenda. But if we miss it, we carry on with our own agenda, and it seems a bit rude. And is it a possibility that they get fed up with us and call us names? Or get angry with us? I don't know, but that's one thing worth asking. Worth keeping in mind. A lot of people get into ITC to try to prove to themselves if this communication is possible. Is it real? Is it fake? Is it in the imagination? Is it pareidolia? I can say with a lot of certainty that this is real. And the reason why I can say that is, I'm doing this a couple of years now, but I have looked into the history as well. Other researchers from the past, Marcello Bacci, Annabella Cardoso, Frederick Jurgensen, all these people. And the sad thing is, a lot of ITC researchers, in explanation marks, won't even look into the history. They will be influenced by somebody on YouTube that wants to entertain you. That might be good or bad. I don't know. Sometimes it's bad, but if you want to go on that journey to explore ITC yourself, it's a very, very good idea, and I would advise it very, very strongly to look into the history. Look into the history of the paranormal. Look into the history of ITC. Look into all of these researchers, the work they have done in the past, and maybe get some books. I have most of Annabella Cardoso's books. Now, she deals with direct radio voice and EVP, and doesn't do the scanned radio method that we do, but there is a lot of information that can be brought forward to all of ITC, So it's a good idea to look into the history of ITC, get familiar with it, but do not fear any of this. It's very, very easy to be feared, but don't fear this. Even though it's real, even though you're communicating with a communicator of an unknown source, you have to be of a positive mindset. And you have to sort of try and leave fear out of this. The reason why we should manage our fear is when we're doing ITC, we're trying to communicate with those communicators. And if we get an answer to our question, and if we show fear because they answered the question, maybe the communicators may not want to communicate with you if they feel like they are going to give you fear. Maybe the communicators may not want to scare you, and if they get a reaction from you that you're scared because they answered the question directly from you, they may be wondering why ask the question if you're afraid of the answer. And so this is very important that you try to manage that fear. And in order to manage that fear, you need to be familiar of what exactly you're doing. It's a source of communication. Yes, the communicators are of an unknown source or origin. We know this. This is part of that fear, the fear that we cannot see. But we must at all costs try and avoid the fear during the communication. Otherwise, we may be stunting that communication. They may not want to communicate with us if we show fear after they answer a question or if they try to communicate. So it's very, very important to manage that fear. In the beginning of this, the reason why I'm doing this is because of a new operator that was getting demonic type communication. Is demons, angels, satanic beings real? I don't know. Biblical texts will tell you that this is real, but biblical text is not a scientific document. Yes, I'm a Christian, but biblical texts don't come into my communication because the Bible is not a scientific document. and I cannot bring the information that's on biblical text into this communication, because it taints the communication. It taints what I'm trying to do here. So, you know, the Bible and biblical text is faith-based text. Faith is good, but faith will not give you 100% an answer. You need facts. So, is demons, angels, and satanic beings real? I don't know. But if you get communication that is saying that they're demons and devils and stuff, you cannot see that communicator. So it could be a communicator that is trying to scare you, or it may be demons and devils. I don't know. But are you going to take a chance? You're going to take a chance on communicating with somebody that's communicating to you in a demonic way? I would prefer not to. And the way I would deal with that is just say, I'm closing communication now. Anything left to say, and close your communication. That's what I do now. People would say, no, curse words and demons and devils and demonic type communication, it's all great evidence. But do you really want to have that negativity in your psyche? I certainly don't. Yes, curse words is very sort of good evidence, but if you have this negative communication, we have to go back again to the operator possibly being part of that communication. If you are part of that communication, do you really want to be involved? Do you really want your body? Do you really want your mind involved in that conversation? I would prefer not to be honest with you. So what I do is I cut that communication and take a break. I try not to be fearful of that. And, in the beginning, yes, I was fearful. I was fearful of that type of communication. But you have to ask the question, are these communicators messing with you? Are they really being truthful? You cannot take communication as 100% accurate facts, because we cannot see them. We cannot see them talking to us. We don't have visual evidence in audio communication. So, by continuing on the conversation, you are going into this blind. You do not know what you're doing. You do not know who you're talking to, and in most cases, in all cases, we don't exactly know what we're communicating with. So I would rather not get involved with negative communication. Is it something I still fear? No, I don't. I would rather cut communication if someone is trying to communicate and trying to scare me. Whether it is demonic beings or not, I would rather not just take that chance. I'm not fearful of it now, but I used to be. And there was a time where I would taunt this communication. If you're the devil, I'm the Cookie Monster, blah blah blah, and sort of making fun. I don't tend to do that anymore. Do you know? So I only tell you what I do. You have to make your own choice on what you want to do when negative communication comes to you. I can't make that choice for you. So I hope you understand that. A lot of evidence throughout the years have pointed in the direction that the communication is from some sort of afterlife dimension. Now, if this is the case, we sometimes are conditioned from Christian beliefs and programs such as Touched by an Angel. Now, Roma Downey is an actor that actually is from this town that I'm living in. And the program is full of very positive, very wholesome content about the afterlife. Angels talking nice, being sweet, but you look at our dimension, our earthly dimension. You know, look at individuals. Not everybody is nice. Some people have embedded personalities that are not so good, and that's embedded into their personality. Do they suddenly turn into saints when they pass away and they communicate back to us? I don't think so. You know, I have had a very harsh communication. I've had swear words. I've had name calling, which may or may not have been directed at me. I do not know. But this is part of human communication is like that. Not everybody's nice. So that's one thing to just be aware of. You know, very often the paranormal, our impression of afterlife dimensions is often influenced by what we see on TV, which is actually fiction. It's geared towards entertaining us. Some of these programs, like Touched by an Angel, is offering entertainment and positivity and God's message. Reality can be a completely different thing. So please be aware of that. Be aware of your influence. In the past, I have been influenced by people that I now regret that I've been influenced by, because a lot of people, even on YouTube, follow a crowd. And the more crowd that follows them, it grades their authenticity. And it's very often not the case. Just because the masses follow a certain way of doing things, or a certain person, doesn't mean that it's right. So just be aware of that. The last thing I want to say about fear is a negative emotion. And you want to try and avoid that in your communication if you at all possibly can. Try to focus, put into your head, what exactly are you doing? You're communicating with communicators of an unknown source. It's not a party trick. It's not a video for YouTube. it's a personal event which is extremely, extremely special. You will not get how important that is on a lot of YouTube videos. That communication from that unknown source is a very, very special event. And you need to be reminded of that when you do these sessions, when you do this communication. It's a very special event. It's not for YouTube videos or Facebook videos. It's communication which is an extremely, extremely special event. Intention. Intention's important. What is your intention in doing this communication? If it's to make YouTube videos, you might as well stop right now, because that's not what this is about. The intention should be to communicate with this unknown source. Your curiosity, you're trying to learn, but you are the student, because you don't know, I don't know. Which brings me on to ego. If you have a high ego, you need to leave that at the door when doing this. There is a lot of people on YouTube that have very big egos. And when you see their videos, you get this impression that it's all about them. It's very little about them. It's about the communicators. People tend to forget about that. When you do this communication and you get communication, that is a very, very special thing. But a lot of people forget you won't get communications without communicators. And very often people on YouTube don't respect the communicators. They make it about them. I got this communication. Look at me. I'm so good. I'm a brilliant ITC researcher. A lot of the ITC researchers from the past, they don't have egos. They don't make themselves out to be special. Marcello Bacci, he was a humble man. Actually, a lot of people didn't even know about Marcello Bacci. The reason for that was the important thing is the communicators. You have to have that in mind when doing the communication. You know, you're always a student in this. We're always learning. We don't know the facts. The communicators possibly know more than what we do. We certainly can't see them. We certainly don't get 100% good communication like we communicate with each other. That day isn't here right now. We get small fragments of information. That's all we get. At the end of the day, we are just the operators. We are just the receivers of the message. We're not. We have to be humbled by that. You know, with ITC, the most important thing is the communicators. We have to remember that. Sadly, you'd see on YouTube a lot of people with a lot of egos. Look at me, I get all this communication. This is the best communication that was ever conducted. All these kind of things. That doesn't mean a damn thing. doesn't matter how many subscribers you have, it doesn't matter how many viewers you have. It's not a fraction of importance than the importance of the communicators. And that's why we need to respect the communicators. We don't know who the communicators are, but without the communicators, we actually have nothing. And at the end of the day, we can research for years and years, and at the end of the day, we still know nothing in comparison to the communicators. So that's very, very important. Fear is often linked with the many theories and assumptions about the paranormal and ITC. Such theories and assumptions very often don't have a solid 100% concrete fact proof in that theory or assumption. One such theory which could generate fear is the assumption that when somebody turns on a radio or a spirit box, that the spirits that are communicating are in close proximity to the radio or spirit box. This is not based on scientific fact. A lot would believe in this theory, and what tells me that a lot believe in this theory is that a lot of people bring spirit boxes and radios to abandoned buildings and graveyards and spooky places, and assuming that they are speaking to the spirits of that location. The fact is, you may not. There is no 100% way of proving that you're speaking to entities within close proximity of that radio. If people make this assumption and then they get negative communication, they automatically jump to that conclusion that those communicators that are seeing these horrible things are in close proximity to you, and that's where the fear kicks in. But maybe it doesn't work that way. I can't certainly say that the theory is wrong. I'm just saying things to open your mind to other possibilities. So to make an assumption that communicators are communicating with you only because they're in close proximity to you may be completely inaccurate. For example, you have communications through two-way radio. That other person is not in your close proximity. They could be a mile away. They're still communicating with you through the airwaves. That is another way of trying to look into this and explore other possibilities. Have your mind open to other theories. People may say, well, I asked for the colour of my t-shirt. I got an answer, a direct answer to that, and it was the right answer. I held up a card with numbers on it. They got it correct. I held up a colour card. They got it correct. I even, at one stage, I asked, can you see me right now? And the answer I got was, we can see you. And then I says, right, I got a direct answer to that question, but I'm not 100% satisfied that wasn't potluck, that it was a radio snippet. So I says, if you can see me right now, what is sitting beside me? And they said dog, which was 100% correct. People might say, well, if they were not in close proximity to you, how did they see the cards, the colours, the objects, or what was sitting beside you? We don't fully understand the dimensions outside our own. We have theories, but there is a number of different theories, all which are theories, and to assume one theory, very often the reason why the person assumes that theory is because they are following blindly other people. Let's, for example, say that my belief, I believe in certain theories, and that it doesn't mean that they're correct, but some people project them as their belief, and their belief is right. Therefore, the people that follow a person and believe everything they say will believe that theory as well. Is that theory correct? It possibly is. It may not be. So be careful about influence again. You are on your own journey. Even if you are influenced by others, you still are on your own journey. So you have to find your truth. But it's very, very important not to jump to conclusions without 100% facts or very, very strong evidence attached to it. It's very, very important to do that. So keep an open mind. George Meek believed in the theory that the outer dimensions of the afterlife were a number of levels of dimensions, and we could communicate with the lower levels of existence, but when a entity or communicator ascended to other higher levels of existence, the communication was not possible. Now that is a good theory, but at the same time I still have to find my truth. And we should all have that in mind, that we still have to find our own truth and our own analysis of what we may proceed, what we may be communicating with, because we have the voices, we just don't have the pictures, we don't have the visuals, and so that the visuals would be a very important piece of information which we don't have. They can't show us. The last fear is not a question I was asked by the user, but it's a fear all the same, and that is a fear to show your evidence publicly or your sessions. When you show your evidence publicly, that is open for people's scrutiny. Now, there is, some different types of people that will project their views onto you. There is people that think we're all nuts and we're all mad and it's just radio. And most of these scrutinies, I would say the burden of proof is not on you, it's actually on them. If they think that it's snippets of radio or it's all bullshit, then the burden of proof is on them. You have shown your evidence. If they have something to say about it, negatively, then show your proof that you are correct. And very often you will get silence in that regard. So, dealing with that kind of confrontation where somebody is trying to put you down, if they say that your evidence is bullshit, and you believe that you have got good evidence, the burden of proof is on them to prove you wrong. And very often they won't go to that extent. I would say don't fear that confrontation. Don't fear other people's opinions, because very often those opinions don't come with evidence. I would not get upset over it, or I would not be afraid to use your medium, if it's your YouTube channel or your Facebook or your whatever platform you use. Don't be afraid of other people, because at the end of the day, whatever you do in life, there's always somebody with a negative mindset that will want to put you down. Very often the negative comments that I get, which is very few, you go to their channel and they don't have anything. So their opinion actually doesn't really matter unless they can prove that their statement is fact, which they never do. They never do. Similar, certain Christian groups look down upon this, and very often, well, the odd time, you get these comments. Oh, you're speaking to demons, and this is against God. And next thing, you get a quotation from the Bible, and my response to that is, the Bible is not a scientific document. It is not based in fact. It's based on faith, which means I cannot take your quotation as a scientific proof that I am talking to demons. And very often now, I don't even make the assumption that I'm talking to spirits. I don't use that label. So I will say that I got communications from an unknown source. Now that person will say, well, you're talking to demons and you're talking to Satan. You shouldn't be doing that. Well, again, the answer is still the same. The burden of proof is on you. And good luck with proving your statement, because I've yet to get an answer to those particular statements, and boy, I would love to get an answer to those statements, because to be honest with you, I cannot see a person being able to back that up with hard evidence, apart from quotations from the Bible. Again, not a scientific document. I am not putting down the Bible. I'm not putting down people's faith. I am a Christian myself. But the Bible doesn't belong in paranormal research, in my opinion. And faith and belief is all okay, but it's not evidence. So, you will get from time to time people that will not be happy with what you're doing or will have something negative to say. Um, and if somebody just says, "Oh, it's fake," without any explanation, well, that's not really worth giving your energy to. But you can just basically say, "Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your evidence that uh, makes you better than me." And then again, if it's a YouTube channel, you go onto the YouTube channel and there's no videos, which is very, very disappointing, to be honest with you. One last fear I want to talk about, and that's the fear of being wrong. Listen, we're all human beings, we all make mistakes. ITC is no different. It's experimentation. We do things, they may not work. We make statements, we may have a different opinion in the future. I've made statements before that I regret making. That is just the nature of what life is. We change our opinion. And one of those things about having opinions and having a view on methods is you can talk about that subject, but you have more strength to your statements if you try that method or piece of equipment yourself. So have an understanding of what you're talking about before making a statement. Then you are covering yourself. People have opinions on certain matters, and sometimes very, very strong opinions, but very often don't investigate things for themselves. I have done things that I didn't particularly want to do, but I wanted to get to the bottom of, and to find out that the method wasn't as good as it was portrayed to be. But I had to go down that road to find out for myself. So, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Don't be afraid to say that you're wrong. We all make mistakes, and mistakes are going to be made in this because it is experimentation. It is trying out new things. And don't be afraid to try out new things. Try out different methods, try out different radios, try out EVPs, in different sort of ways. Don't be afraid to experiment for yourself. And just because somebody else hasn't done it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Thinking outside the box is good. Leaving on a positive note, many people have tried to disprove the ITC methods that are currently being used. The reason why they're currently being used is no one has been able to disprove those methods. And over time you will get very, very good evidence. But you have to put in the time. Put into the time and the effort, and it will reward you. So enjoy, don't be fearful. Put in your hours, put in your practice, try different things, and just enjoy it. I just want to add there that what I said today is my opinion on a subject. I was asked a question, I give an answer with my opinion. Very often in the paranormal ITC, people ask questions. If it's not a technical question and it's to do with the communication, it's very often our opinion and theory on the subject. You know, on a technical aspect, we can be a little bit more factual about certain things, but certainly what I've expressed today is an opinion. Other opinions may differ, and that's okay. It's not a reason for conflict. It could be a reason for debate, and debate is often a healthy thing. I hope this was helpful for the person that asked the question. I did give an answer in writing, but obviously I didn't do the amount of writing that I spoke today, and talking about this is more easier for me to explain and uh, put my point of view across. It's easier just to talk about it. So that's what I've done. Maybe it's helpful for other people in ITC. That's why I decided I would share it, you know. But I'm going to go, folks. I'll talk to you again soon. Again, sorry that this was not a video, um, because the audio and visuals did not sync up for me, and I had to do this as an audio thing instead. But hopefully, maybe next video I'll get that sorted and that. So, talk to you again soon, and thank you very much.